Been a long time coming, but I'm here. I was drifting, now I'm shifting gears. Now I gotta wait a lifetime. Right now this is my time, this is gonna be my year.
I traveled a lot this past year, and one thing I learned is that is an excellent opportunity to intentionally listen to music. This year, I mostly did that on the AirPods Pro 2, and while I really enjoyed their sound signature, their battery life has not been good enough for the travels that I've been doing. So for the upcoming year, I've been looking for a really good pair of over-ear headphones that are also wireless and have really good noise cancellation, so that I can enjoy music on an extended train or plane ride. And in this video, I want to take you on that little journey with me, compare the AirPods Max to the Sony XM4 and XM5s, and in the end tell you which one I've decided to keep and which ones I think you should pick up if you're in the market for something like that. Objectively reviewing headphones in a format like this, in a YouTube video, requires very expensive equipment that I don't have. So if you are looking for an objective review with frequency response graphs, or if you are waiting to sort of listen to these headphones yourself, this is not the video for you. I'm not going to be trying to hold these to a microphone somehow because it's not going to do them any justice, and I don't have the equipment to measure them. So instead of objectively reviewing these headphones, this is going to be a subjective video with my opinions on them. And as such, I think it's quite important that you get to know me before we dive into this together. On a daily basis, I've been listening to music mostly on these, the Biodynamic DT1990 Pro, and I connect them to a topping DX3 Pro Plus headphone amplifier. These are sort of linear reference style headphones, and I feel like this is important to mention because this is the sound that I'm used to and that I consider sort of perfect. I'm not saying that this is the best sound you can get, but this is the best sound that I know and that I've heard. I feel like this is very important to mention because I'm going to be comparing all of these headphones to my ideal sound, which is basically this. And that means that I am not very fond of overly emphasized bass or sort of really sparkly trebles. And this is something that you might enjoy, and a lot of people do enjoy that. So keep that in mind while listening to my opinions in this review. By really going in depth on the reviews that other people have done, I nailed my selection down to the Sony XM4s, the XM5s, and also the AirPods Max. So these are the headphones that we'll be looking at in this video. We will compare all of these headphones based on the things that are important to me, from most important to least important. And we're going to start with the comfort and the build of these headphones. The new 2024 version of the AirPods Max actually have the same metal build from the original AirPods Max. This has up and downsides. On the upside, they feel super quality. Actually, not dissimilar to the Biodynamics, which also feel really great and are made from metal. On the downside, they are heavier than most other wireless noise cancelling headphones, and this can be a problem for comfort, and it can be a problem when, for example, working out with them. For me personally, this has not been an issue. Maybe they fit my head really well, but if I wear them on my head, I can wear them for a long time without any issues, and I don't really feel the weight or see it as a problem in daily use. Looking at the headband of the AirPods Max, you can see that they are still made from metal, but the metal is covered in the silicone that is very similar to the one that Apple uses on some of their cases, for example the ones for the iPad Pro. Then we have this mesh material that's still identical to the one of the original AirPods Max, and at least for me is very soft and feels very good on my head. Some people have said that they have issues with the metal bars touching their skull when they put it on. This is not an issue for me. If I put them on, only the mesh is contacting my skull, and it's actually very comfortable. The size of the AirPods Max can be adjusted by pulling out the ear cup with this super smooth motion. This is honestly perfect and feels very satisfying. And then the angle of the ear cups relative to your head can be adjusted as well. And again, for me, when putting them on, they fit extremely well and sit perfectly against my ears, and I don't have any pressure points even after having them on my head for hours. I also don't have any problems when wearing glasses with the AirPods Max. Usually when I wear headphones with higher clamping pressures, I get a headache after some time because they press the glasses into my head too much. This is not an issue with the AirPods Max, and I suspect that it is because of these cushions. They feel better to me even than the ones on the DT1990 Pro, which I thought were incredible. I also love how easy it is to replace these. They attach magnetically and are replaced in a matter of seconds. This is great because these will eventually wear out and you're going to have to replace them. And with some headphones, this is very tricky or downright impossible without destroying them. So this is great for longevity. Then on the right ear cup, the AirPods Max have two buttons. One that is used for noise cancellation and a second one that is very akin to the digital crown on the Apple Watch. You can use this one for volume adjustments, or you can press it once to play and pause, you can press it twice to skip to the next track, 3 times to go back, and you can press and hold it for Siri. Interestingly, both of these buttons can also be pressed simultaneously, and this is extremely useful, because usually when I'm listening to music with noise cancellation on, but then I want to talk to someone, I want to both pause the music and go into transparency mode. On the AirPods Pro, this means holding to enabling transparency mode and then pressing once to pause the music. On the AirPods Max, it's one motion where I just press both buttons at once. On the bottom of the AirPods Max, you can see a cutout that is used for the antenna. It looks very similar to the ones on the iPads, for example. And then you can see various microphone holes around the headphone that are used both for noise cancellation and for recording your voice, for example, while you're on a phone call. And finally, on the bottom we have a USB-C port. Honestly, I have a very split opinion on this port. On the one hand, I really like that it's USB-C now because I think I can finally use one cable for everything. I think my AirPods Pro were the last device that was still using Lightning, and I actually moved to charging them wirelessly. So if I would have gotten these with a Lightning port, that would have actually been a step back. But the downside of having the USB-C port is that Apple actually ditched the capability of listening to those with a cable. And honestly, this is quite the downgrade in my opinion, because that means that you can only use them with the Bluetooth latency. So for example, when editing videos or something, the latency really kicks in and it's quite annoying. I personally don't game, but I imagine that having the latency of a Bluetooth headphone would also be a problem there. The suspicion that I have is that Apple may have looked at the analytics and figured out that most people are not really using a cable to connect to their AirPods Max. Also, on the Lightning version of these headphones, the cable would really only help with latency, because on the chain from your digital version of the file to the driver, it would first be converted by your DAC on your phone or on your sound card basically, from digital to analog, then be sent analog through the 3.5mm headphone jack, to then be converted back to digital, sent to the Lightning port, to then be converted back to analog by your DSP and the amplifier and the headphone so that it could come to the driver. I would have still loved a way of connecting straight from an analog source, basically, to the drivers of these with a cable. The final thing that obviously needs to be mentioned in terms of build quality in an AirPods Max review is this case that Apple still ships with them even in the second generation. Now, I find it a bit weird that this case doesn't cover the arguably most fragile part of these headphones, which is the mesh on the headband. This is a super thin material that is not backed up by anything else, so I suspect that if this comes into contact with anything sharp, it's basically game over. Also, it doesn't seem to be easily replaceable, so I don't fully understand why they wouldn't design a case that also protects this part, or actually especially protects this part. I think the ear cushions are made from the same material, but because there's something underneath them, something pointy will probably not make a hole immediately. So in terms of protection, I don't think this case serves these headphones super well. The second function the case has is that it puts the headphones into a deep sleep mode, but honestly over the last 4 years I think a lot of people have used the AirPods Max without the case, and I haven't heard too much catastrophic issues with the deep sleep mode or the battery life when keeping them outside the case, so I don't know, if you want I guess you can just ditch the case. So all in all, I think the build quality of the AirPods Max is quite excellent, and at least for me they fit well and are also comfortable for extended periods of time, but your mileage may vary. Let's start with the possible color choices on the Sony headphones. I have a representative of the black color and the lighter color here with the XM4s and the XM5s. I would highly recommend that you get the lighter color if you can. The black soft touch finish on the XM5s that I have here is basically impossible to keep clean. I tried my best for the B-roll shots, but the moment you touch them you have fingerprints on them, so yeah, I don't recommend this color. In terms of material choices, both of the Sony headphones come with soft touch plastic and then faux leather on all the parts that touch your head. The design of the headband on both of these headphones is a slight downgrade in terms of comfort for me personally, because the headband creates a pressure point just on top of my skull. This is probably because once this compressible faux leather bottoms out, there is a hard plastic layer underneath it that basically just presses against your head and then obviously creates a pressure point. This is not the case on the AirPods Max, at least for me, because this mesh material has nothing underneath it and only soft parts touch your head, so there's no pressure points, at least for me. Some people have reported the exact opposite though, where they say that the XM5s are more comfortable for them, so clearly this seems to depend on your head shape. In terms of controls, both of these headphones are mostly the same as well. Both of them come with two buttons, one for power and for pairing and another one for noise cancellation. That is labeled noise cancellation on the XM5s, but for some reason custom on the XM4s. In terms of connectivity, they both come with a USB-C port that can be used for charging, but unfortunately cannot be used to connect an audio source digitally. But they both come with a 3.5mm headphone jack that you can use to connect an analog source to both of them. Both of the headphones have a touch surface on the right ear cup that you use to control your media. You double tap to play and pause, you swipe left and right to skip forward and backward, you swipe up and down for volume adjustments, and finally you can press and hold to trigger your voice assistant. On these headphones this can be the Google Assistant, it can be Amazon's Alexa, or on iOS you can also configure Siri. One thing only the XM5s can do is that if you cover the surface of the right ear cup, it will turn down the noise cancellation and also turn down your music so that you can have a quick conversation. Both of the Sony headphones do make quite a lot more noises when adjusting compared to the AirPods Max, and they do squeak quite a bit. Especially when wearing them on my head, I hear quite a bit of squeaking from the faux leather cushions against my glasses. This was especially apparent with sunglasses. This is a problem that I didn't have at all with the fabric cushions of the AirPods Max. They are dead silent when you wear them against glasses. The theme of the Sony headphones being quite a bit more noisy also continues if you charge them while you wear them. In this case, the noise of the cable rubbing against your clothes can be heard clearly inside the ear cup. This is in stark contrast to the AirPods Max, which are basically dead silent in this case. The last thing that looks to be different visually but is actually the same is the way that the ear cups adjust their angle towards your head. The XM4s use this fork mechanism to pivot the ear cup around their center. On the XM5s, it looks like the ear cups pivot around this top point, similar to the AirPods Max, but this is not the case. Internally, they also pivot around the center of the ear cup. I suspect that this is one of the reasons that these ear cups look fairly deep, but in fact are quite shallow. So if I have these on my head, my ears actually touch the inside of the ear cups. This is not the case for the AirPods Max, even though they seem to look a little bit slimmer on my head to me. In terms of what's different, the XM4s actually fold down, which is quite nice for travel. The XM5s don't do this, so if you travel with these headphones, the XM4s are definitely more compact. In this regard, the XM5s are the same as the AirPods Max and you somehow need to store them in full size. What is different to the AirPods Max though, is that both the Sony headphones come with a protective case that protects the headphones from any direction essentially. The case on the XM4 is a little bit smaller than the case on the XM5, which I have here. And yeah, you just pop the headphones in, it has a zipper around it, it has a little hook on top, and there you go. The second thing that's different is that if you wear these headphones around your neck, the XM5s actually fold forward with the ear cup facing outward, whereas the XM4s face the ear cup inwards. And just to complete the comparison, the AirPods Max actually also go outwards with the ear cups. In summary, the AirPods Max feels significantly more premium than the Sony alternatives. On the one hand, this is due to the material choices, which makes the AirPods Max feel significantly more hefty. And the second reason is that all the adjustments on the AirPods Max are actually spring-loaded and have quite a bit of resistance. This is in contrast to the Sony headphones, where all the adjustments are extremely low resistance, and this somehow just makes them feel a lot cheaper. In terms of comfort, I have to say that there is no clear winner for me. It seems to really depend on your head shape which headphone is more comfortable. And while the AirPods Max are more comfortable for me when stationary, the moment I start moving around, the weight really starts to show. And in that case, the Sony are slightly more comfortable for me. So it's really a give and take, and in terms of build quality and comfort, I really can't say which headphone I prefer in the end. Let's talk about what you probably care most about anyway, which is the sound quality of all of these headphones. For this test, where possible, I connected them with a 3.5mm headphone jack cable to a DX3 Pro Plus headphone amplifier, so that each one of these headphones can put their best foot forward. The AirPods Max obviously do not support a wired mode currently, which means that they're at a slight disadvantage, but I can already tell you that at this level of audio quality, it doesn't really matter if we use Bluetooth or a wire. Honestly, to me, they sound about the same either way. With the Sony headphones, I also want to note that I had them turned on during this test so that the noise cancellation and the DSP kicks in, even though they're in wired mode. And finally, I want to mention that if you do this for yourself, it's really important that you run all of these headphones in the same volume, because we tend to perceive louder audio as better, which is not necessarily the case. So we need to make sure that all of these have about the same loudness before we test. I selected 3 songs from Apple Music and I used high-res lossless where possible. For 2 of the 3 this was the case, for 1 it's only the regular lossless format. Again, I did this so that we have the best possible sort of preconditions for all of these headphones, and neither the audio source nor the preamplifier can be the issue here. I encourage you to just look up these songs if you're interested in how I tested these headphones and see for yourself, but I'll also tell you for each one of them why I selected them specifically. The first song I selected is called Box of Stars Part 1 by Jacob Collier. And I selected this song because I think that it is really well produced and it has a lot of different layers and a lot of detail that can be heard on all of these headphones. At the same time, this song makes it relatively easy for these headphones to sort of separate the instruments because it makes a lot of use of stereo imaging. So some instruments are really far left, whereas others are really far on the right, and it really makes use of this sort of space. And this means that this song is a great test of the sound staging capabilities of all of these headphones, and at the same time we can really hear generally how good the audio quality is. I started by listening to the song on the DT1990 Pro to have sort of a baseline. And what I noticed is that the soundstage is really wide on these headphones and you can extremely precisely pinpoint the instruments in space. At the same time, it provides really good instrument separation and a really balanced mix. And you can also hear the bass line very precisely on these headphones. So overall, I would say things are really balanced on these headphones, except that these may be a little bit sparkly on the high end. This is something that the DT1990 Pro are sort of known for. I then proceeded to listen to the same song with both of the Sony headphones, without any equalization. And what I noticed is that they are really sort of muddy in the bass, and the bass is generally quite overwhelming on these out of the box. I didn't really enjoy it too much, and at the same time I noticed that especially on the XM5s there was barely any treble in the song, so I didn't really enjoy sort of the sound quality of these headphones. And while the image separation was still there, it was really difficult to discern the individual instruments, especially sort of in the bass area, because again it was just really muddy and really hard to distinguish things. Then I listened to the song on the AirPods Max, and the first thing I noticed is that while they are extremely bassy as well, I can really separate the instruments a lot better in the bass. At the same time, they're also a lot more sparkly in the high ends, very similar to the DT1990 Pro, so actually a little bit overemphasized in the treble frequencies. What I also noticed that especially on the really low frequencies, the AirPods Max are very strong, so it really feels like the bass is almost like pushing through your body when sort of a kick drum or something hits. So it is very impressive that these manage to retain detail while still being significantly emphasized in the bass frequencies and also in the treble frequencies. And this non-linearity on the AirPods Max really presented a problem because they have no option of setting an EQ sort of on the headphones and using it system-wide. It is possible to set an extremely rudimentary equalizer on the iPhone app for Apple Music where you really just have presets to pick from. You have no way of actually setting the bands yourself. And on Apple Music on the Mac, there is actually a 10-band equalizer, but it only applies to the Mac app of Apple Music. So I didn't try to optimize the sound of these in any way using an equalizer because I don't think it's fair, to be honest. You can't really change the sound of these, and in other apps they will still sound the way that they sound out of the box, which is great for casual listening, but not very linear, and I would not recommend that you mix on these. This is not the case for the Sonys. There is an app for Android and iOS that allows you to customize the sound for both of these headphones. And so that's what I did. I basically went into the equalizer settings for both of these headphones, pulled up a frequency response graph for both of them, and then basically adjusted the equalizer to compensate for the bias that they have in all of these bands. The Sony app provides you with an equalizer that ranges from 400 Hz to 16 kHz and provides you with 5 bands in this frequency range, which honestly is not very granular. At the same time, you are provided with what they call a clear bass slider, which essentially, from what I understand, just adjusts the frequencies below 400 Hz. So it's even less granular there. That said, after playing around with the equalizer a bit and sort of compensating for the bias that they have in all the frequency ranges, I did enjoy the sound of these headphones a lot more. I also went ahead and did the test again with the equalizer that Apple Music provides on the Mac, which is a 10-band equalizer that's a lot more granular, especially in the bass frequencies. And I really enjoyed the sound of these a lot more. Especially with the 10-band equalizer, these sounded very balanced, and it was really possible to clean up the bass frequencies quite a bit, so all the detail would open up. At the same time, I was able to add back in the treble frequencies that are really missing on the XM5s, and with these settings I did prefer the XM5 sound over the XM4s and even over the AirPods Max. Here you can see all the equalizer settings for the XM4 headphones that I used, and these are the equalizer settings I used for the XM5s. Personally, I would love for Sony to include more bands in their equalizer, especially between the 5 kHz and 16 kHz range, because it's really difficult to sort of match these headphones using the equalizer, especially in this frequency band. I would also personally love to have more adjustment flexibility below 400 Hz, because while the clear bass slider definitely does something, I think it would be nicer to be able to do this more granularly. The next song I tested was Edamame by Baby No Money, and I started again with the DT1990 to get a bass line. This song is really bass heavy, and I picked it specifically for that, so I could test how the bass behaves between those headphones. And honestly, on the DT1990 Pro, for my personal taste, there was plenty of bass. I could really feel the bass coming through the headphones, and it was still really detailed and nice. So I did enjoy the listening experience on these quite a bit. I then proceeded again to the Sony headphones without any equalizer settings. And honestly, with this song, the bass was so overwhelming it was really difficult to listen to in my opinion. So again, without an equalizer, I did not enjoy the sound signature of these headphones. I had a very similar experience with the AirPods Max, and for me personally, the bass was quite overwhelming. That said, again, the AirPods Max retained a lot more detail than the Sonys without the equalizer. And I think for casual listening, especially for people that really like bass, these would be a great choice. And finally, I went back to the Sonys with the equalizer settings enabled, and I had a very similar picture as before. You can really clean up the bass quite a bit, and you can add back the treble frequencies that are missing, and they sound just so much better with the equalizer settings. So for bass heavy songs specifically, I really do prefer the Sony headphones with the equalizer settings, because I can tune down the bass and I can make them just more enjoyable for me to listen to. I think if I would have to sit on a 4-hour train ride with the AirPods Max listening to this kind of music, it would be really quite fatiguing, and I don't know if I could even do it. Finally, I wanted to pick a song that is more challenging for these headphones. While the first song I picked has really clear instrument separation, and the second song I picked has a really clear bass line, the third song I picked is quite crowded, and it has a lot of instruments and does not make use of stereo imaging the same way that the first song does. So it will make it more difficult for these headphones to sort of separate out the instruments and make it honestly an enjoyable listening experience. The song I picked is called Hysteria by Muse and is mixed more like a classical rock song. On the DT1990 Pro, I had no issue separating out the instruments and it sounded nice and balanced. On the Sonys without the equalizer, I had the same issue again, and this time the song almost sounded muffled. Especially in the bass line, I had extreme trouble separating out the instruments, and it sounded like there were less instruments than with the DT1990 Pro, for example. With the AirPods Max, the separation was a lot better, though not excellent. And especially in the high frequencies with hi-hats and the cymbals of the drums, I felt like these were a bit too sparkly and almost overwhelming. Finally, going back to the Sonys again with the equalizer set, they were a lot closer to the DT1990 Pro again. And while instrument separation and the soundstage was not as good as with the DT1990 Pro, listening to the song was a very pleasant experience with both of these. I want to split the summary of my subjective opinion of the sound quality of these headphones in 3 sections, starting with out-of-the-box sound. In my opinion, the AirPods Max definitely sound the best here. So if you just want to pull these out of the box, just put them on your head and listen to music, I would get these. With quite a significant gap behind them, I would pick the XM4s. I really don't like the way that they sound in the bass without any equalization, and I feel like they are also lacking a little bit in the higher frequencies and in the upper mids. And the worst to me without equalization are the XM5s. The bass is similarly overwhelming to the XM4s and really muddy, and they are really lacking quite a bit of treble, so I don't like the way that these sound out of the box. If you have the option of a 10-band equalizer, like the one found in Apple Music on the Mac, I would go with either of the Sony headphones. Honestly, I can match them quite closely with the 10-band equalizer, and I think it's really a head-to-head race. I can't really pick out one that's better in this case. And with a 10-band equalizer, personally, I would pick either of the Sony headphones over the AirPods Max just in terms of sound. Finally, with the 5-band equalizer that Sony offers in their app, I do prefer the XM5s over the XM4s because I feel like the frequencies that they picked for their 5 bands match the biases of these headphones better. So in the end, with the 5-band EQ, these to me sound preferable. That said, even with the 5-band EQ, the XM5 sound quite linear, and I do prefer their sound over the AirPods Max in this case personally. So if you are looking for a more casual listening experience where you don't have to be so hands-on with the equalizer settings and stuff like that, I would probably pick the AirPods Max. They do sound the best out of the box. But if you don't mind diving into the settings and adjusting the equalizer to your liking, I would pick the XM5s. Because if set up to your taste, these will probably sound the most neutral and the most detailed out of these headphones, and I'm quite happy with the sound of these for wireless noise cancelling headphones. Let's briefly talk about battery life then, because the original reason why I even wanted to get noise cancelling over-ear headphones was that my AirPods Pro 2 kept dying on me for longer travels. Now, any of these headphones have plenty of battery life for that. The AirPods Max are quoted to last 20 hours, and this has been confirmed by people since 2020 testing the AirPods Max. So this is plenty good enough for me. That said, both of the Sony headphones are quoted to last 30 hours, and I can sort of confirm by my testing that these last significantly longer, especially when just laying around, because you can just turn them off instantly after using them, and then their standby battery life is just incredible. You can also put the AirPods Max back in the case, but if you don't do that and just leave them laying around, then their battery is gonna get drained for a little while before they fully power down. Then let's talk about some of the special features that all of these headphones have, starting with the control schema. I do prefer the buttons on the AirPods Max over the touch-sensitive surface on the Sonys. And this is mostly because they work while wearing gloves. The buttons are very tactile, they're easy to feel, the digital crown is very intuitive to sort of use, and they can be pressed simultaneously, which makes these very easy to use, especially in winter and also with gloves. This is not the case with the Sonys, except if you have gloves that are specifically made to work with touch surfaces. And especially in winter, this is quite disappointing to me, because then basically you cannot control these whatsoever. When it comes to controlling these headphones from your phone, it really depends on whether you're an iOS or an Android. On iOS, the AirPods Max are much easier to control from your phone. On Android, the Sonys are much easier to control from your phone. Next, in terms of transparency mode, it's honestly not much of a competition. The AirPods Max are much better. Especially your own voice sounds a lot more natural on the AirPods Max compared to the Sonys. That said though, I think the transparency mode on the AirPods Pro 2 is even better than on the AirPods Max. So this is another point where I'm a little disappointed that these don't have the H2 chip, even though they were updated in 2024. And I do believe that the transparency mode could be even better if they would have gotten the H2 chip based on the evidence from the AirPods Pro. In terms of switching between devices, the AirPods Max, especially on iOS, have a leg up again, because their switching between devices sort of just works. If you start playing on a different device that is paired to these and is an Apple device, they just connect to that device within a second or two and it just immediately works. When it comes to this feature on the Sonys, both of them provide multi-point Bluetooth, but that reduces the audio quality, so for me that is not an option. When it comes to switching between devices with the multi-point Bluetooth disabled, the XM5s are better. Because if you take a device that is not currently connected to these and you basically connect to it through the Bluetooth settings, they switch. Whereas on the XM4s, this is not the case, and I have to sort of disconnect from the first device before I can reconnect from a different device. In terms of voice assistants, the Sonys are a bit more flexible again, because you can pick between Google's, Amazon's, or Apple's offering in terms of that. Whereas on the AirPods Max, you are stuck with Siri. On the AirPods Max, the lack of H2 chip comes biting them again, because they don't support the updated keyword for Apple's voice assistant, whereas the AirPods Pro 2 can listen to the new keyword. Right now you are listening to my voice through a DJI Mic 2, and I have a Bluetooth speaker next to me, playing back city noises like a fire truck in a lot of traffic. This is what it would sound like if you would listen to my voice through the microphone of the Sony XM5s instead. This is what my voice would sound like in the same setup through the AirPods Max. And finally, this is what it would sound like to listen to my voice on the XM4 headphones, again using the same setup. Finally, a few considerations on price. When it comes to wired headphones and audio equipment in general, it sometimes makes sense to spend a little bit more money, because they can last a very long time. There is not much that can break in these, and at the same time audio quality hasn't substantially improved in the last few decades or so. So buying a headphone like this, they will really probably last you a decade or two at least. This is not the case for these kinds of headphones, because they do have batteries that will degrade over time, and the tech still moves quite quickly. So there will be new Bluetooth standards and there will be new features that these will probably not get. So if it comes to how comfortable I feel about spending 500 euros on wired headphones or wireless headphones, it's quite different for me. I feel okay spending 500 euros on these because I know that they will last a long time for me. But spending 500 euros on a pair of wireless headphones is different for me because they will probably not last as long. So in conclusion, with the Sonys costing about half of what the AirPods Max cost, I think these are a much better financial decision compared to the AirPods Max. And especially if you are okay with EQing these a bit, I think these are a really good choice and do even sound better than the AirPods Max in the end. If you, however, are deep in Apple's ecosystem, money isn't a super big issue for you, and you just want to pull these out of the box and have an excellent audio experience, then the AirPods Max are still really good. And especially for casual listening, you will be super happy with these. Me personally, I'm gonna stick with the Sony XM5s. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful to you, and if you want to see more videos just like this one, please hit the subscribe button below and hit the like button if you did enjoy this one. Thanks so much, have a great new year, and I'll see you in the next video.